So on behalf of the League of Women Voters of South San Mateo County, I welcome the candidates and especially the audience to this forum for the City Council for the town of Atherton. I'm Linda Craig and I'll be your moderator tonight. The League of Women Voters, as you may know, is a national nonpartisan volunteer organization of men and women. Our education mission is to encourage your active and informed participation in government at every level. The League does not endorse candidates
in D.C. serving the Justice Department. I received a White House fellowship and was appointed by 3 sitting presidents to federal positions. I have worked in and worked against large bureaucracies. I'm not afraid of them. In D.C., I learned a lot about how the federal government works. Now I'm focused on our local community. I've served as legal counsel for the Pacific Stock Exchange, and I'm now at a large bank in our community. As candidates, none of us know what issues will come our way, but my top 3 priorities are traffic safety, high-speed rail, and a sustainable budget. I'd like to help preserve the special character of this community that we all call home. So maybe one day, all our children can walk to school safely, just like we did when we were kids. I look forward to our discussion tonight and ask for your vote on November 4th.
Thank you. Mr. DeGolia.
Okay, I also would like to thank the League of Women Voters and the ACIL for organizing this tonight. I think it's really important that we do this every year. But most of all, I want to thank the voters of Atherton, each and every one of you, for electing me to the City Council last year and making this past year of my service on the council possible. Over this year, I have been surprised by how strategic this position is. We are at an inflection point in Atherton. For the first time since Prop 13, we've had 3 years of budget surpluses, and we're making a change where we're accumulating enough money in our capital fund to begin to make infrastructure improvements in the town that we really haven't made for 30 years. And I'm proud to be a part of that and to be serving you as your representative in the course of doing that. I think the most important thing that I have learned and that I have to talk about is what it means to provide leadership to this town. I have actively taken on what I feel is a responsibility to make myself accessible to you, to hear what your issues are, and to reach out to you and to communicate to you the way I see the issues that come before the City Council. And in that way, I have actively organized a communications committee because I think in Atherton we don't have good communications infrastructure. I have taken on addressing this issue of aircraft noise in the town, where I've provided a real leadership role. And I've taken a strong position with the Civic Center project that we're focused on over the next year. It will be the biggest project in the history of Atherton. And I hope that everybody here has an opportunity to get involved in one way or another and really understand that project, because it's going to change the heart of our town and make it a way that I think can be very meaningful to all of us.
Thank you. Ms. Howe?
I'd also like to thank the League of Women Voters and the ACIL for hosting this event, and for all of you who've attended or are attending. Thank you so much. For those who don't know anything about me, let me give you a brief background. I'm Rose Howe, and I have lived in the Bay Area all my life. I grew up and attended local schools, and you'll see that I've not ventured very far from this. I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in architecture from UC Berkeley, and I'm a licensed architect with 25 years experience as a project manager, licensed architect, as an architect for large-scale biofarm and high-tech facilities, managing budgets and staff. So my husband and I lived in Atherton for 22 years, and we raised our 2 children, lovely children, I might add, who are now gone, and I volunteered in their local schools. I've served in Atherton for 20 years, beginning in 1995, And highlights of my town service include Planning Commission, Audit Committee, Town Center Task Force, and I'm presently Vice Chair of the CCAC and Chair of the Green Building Subcommittee of the CCAC. Candidates are often asked, why are they running? And for me, the question is, why are you running after 20 years of service? And I'm running because I think in the next 4 years, the town's going to embark upon some significant infrastructure projects, being the drainage, the pedestrian and bike upgrades, and last but not least, the Civic Center project. I feel with my architectural background, I can really contribute to the successful completion of these projects. And I hope that you will think so too with my background. There's a potential of $40 million in capital improvements for the next 5 years. And so I hope that in the future in the next phrase, I can talk about this.
Thank you. Mr. Whitmer?
Hi, I'm Bill Whitmer, and I'd like to start out by thanking the ACIL and the League of Women Voters for putting on this important event. Also, thank you for being here. As you may recall from my last campaign, I run on an overriding principle of accountability and fiscal conservatism. I'm also a person who takes action. Over the past 4 years, I've not only served, but led discussions and initiatives on the key issues affecting this town. I played a key role in turning around the town's financial situation, and today we're enjoying surpluses. I initiated the council's action to pay down the pension side benefits and address the retirement health care liabilities, and today they're about half of what they were 4 years ago. I led discussions in bringing town employee benefit costs more in line with the private sector, and I negotiated a $400,000 traffic impact payment from Facebook, and as mayor, ended 4 years of deficit spending and brought safety issues on ECR to the forefront with Caltrans. I brought to light the costs associated with presidential visits, and I led discussions on the establishment of a bike pedestrian master plan. I'm an 18-year resident of Atherton, and I've always given back to the community. I'm a 4-year council incumbent who has served as mayor and vice mayor. I'm also the board chairman of the South Bay Waste Management Authority. I'm a member of the Friends of the Library, the Holbrook Palmer Park Foundation, and the ACIL. I currently serve on the Environmental Programs Committee, the Technology Steering Committee, the Park Board Foundation, and I'm a liaison to the Fire District. I've served on the Audit Committee, the Finance Committee, the Rail Committee, the New Town Center, and other regional and federal committees. Professionally, I have 34 years of senior company. I have a BS, MBA, and CE. I hope you'll consider voting for me for 3 reasons: my performance, my platform, and my professional experience. Thank you very much.
Money that we're paying the architect has to come from private funds. So the Atherton Now fundraising organization that's raising money for this, my understanding is they're not going to announce until they have 50% of the money, and they expect to have that by the end of the year. If they don't have it and they can't announce, then I don't think that the town can now hire the architect. But I agree with what Michael said. I actually have absolutely no doubt that we're going to raise the money. Building this town center is going to be at a cost of what would be 4 or 5 houses in the town. And we have the access to raise the money from people in the town. We have to convince people that it's something that they're interested in. So that is the heart and soul of this fundraising effort. I don't believe that there's any possibility that we're not going to do it. I will put myself 100% on the line to make sure that we do it. I really think that the town needs it. We need a center for the town. We need an open center for the town. I think it's the most important project in the town.
Ms. Howe?
I would agree with everything that's been said. I'm on the CCAC task force as well. In terms of the timeline or deadline, I don't think we need to adhere to something cast in concrete. I think the funding committee is doing the best they can, and I think they will succeed. And I think whatever timeline they come up with is what it is. we will get this new town center. There's no doubt about it, and I fully am invested in it, and I think so many people in the town are invested in it. You know, I think that there's no question of what happens if they don't. They will get the funds for this. So it's a question of just when this will happen, and I think we should all appreciate the fact that this will improve the town. It will be a community center where we can all get gathered together. But you know, there's no real timeline in terms of, you know, if this doesn't happen by a certain date, it's over. It will continue. People are working hard, and it will happen.
Thank you. Mr. Whitmer?
So first off, some of the money's already there. The new town center is actually two buildings. One is a civic center, which would house administration and police and building department, and the other is the new library. And the money for the library is mostly there now. It's intended to be about $9+ million. Of that is there's $7 million. It's already there, and it's growing by about $1 million a year. The town needs a new library, and we need to move forward with that. There's also $2 million in fees that are certainly currently out there and available, so we can move forward with doing some designs and also getting the street layouts fixed. Then the fundraising for the building, which, you know, depends on the size of the building, based on how much money we are going to spend. But you know, that can take a little bit longer. We're not going to knock down a building and then say, okay, now it has to be built. It's being project managed so that no building is going to be knocked down. We won't be without facilities while we're in the process of building. So I think the project would go on. We definitely do need the facilities, but the money is there for the library. We can move forward with that and the street layout by using some of the money that's already there from the building department fees as well as from the library fund. So that's my response. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question then will begin with Mr. Camilla. And this has to do, two questions having to do with the fact that the town is experiencing budget surpluses. And the question is, have you reviewed the new plan budget and what you think of the spending plan versus the revenue, and how spending is held in check? It's a minute and a half, right?
Okay, I definitely reviewed the budget and contributed to approving the budget. It came before the City Council in June. The budget is a $1.5 million budget or expense, and 11.5 million expense, $11.6 million general fund revenue. That doesn't count the parcel tax revenue. This year we decided to divide the parcel tax revenue 20% to go toward the police department for 2 new police officers that were hired or that are being hired, and 80% toward capital improvement projects, which would include such things as the pedestrian and bike path results from the master plan that we're working on, and it would not include the civic center, but the drainage project. There's various other capital improvement projects that we're looking at, and I think that we're in good shape. I think we should continue to be conservative. Just because we have a surplus doesn't mean we should be increasing our operating budget, and we're being very judicious for any change to that operating budget. I think that's the right answer.
Thank you, Ms. Powell.
You know, according to the numbers, I see in terms of revenues and expenditures, we have a surplus of $155,000. So that's good, because in the past we've had a deficit. So this is we're in the black, and I think we should continue to be in the black. In terms of the future, I think that, you know, we need to continue to be very fiscally prudent. Just because we have, you know, not an excess, but a surplus of monies, we need to still look at, you know, the expenses in terms of revenues and make sure that we don't exceed our expenses revenues. You know, so I guess basically, you know, we need to continue on this path, hopefully. And we're lucky because the parcel tax is still in place. We have the property taxes, which have gone up in the years. And I would continue on the path that the council is on now in terms of their conservative outlook on the finances. You know, they are keeping a reserve, 35% reserve, and the capital improvement projects are, that their philosophy is a save and spend. They don't spend anything until they have the money. And I think that's a wise decision for the town to continue on that path.
Thank you.
First off, like Rick, I approved the budget and looked at the 5-year plan, so I guess I'm familiar with the numbers. When I look at the 5-year plan, it does cause a little bit of concern because we're showing that revenues are going up 10%, and if you look out to 5 years, the operational spending is going up 20 years. Double that, 20%. So it does give me a little concern. So, but it needs to be managed, can be managed. So the key thing for me is you have both operational costs and you have capital costs. The capital costs are our investments, and we need to continue to invest in that. As has been pointed out, there are a number of key projects that we need to spend some money on that have been ignored over the last couple of years. The park is one, the drainage master plan is another, the bike pedestrian plan is another. But we do need to keep an eye on our operational costs. That's the head count. We went through some hard times a couple of years ago, as I mentioned in my opening statement. We went ahead and we actually had to do some outsourcing, take some cuts. We don't want to go back through that. So I think that as a council member, as one who's fiscally conservative, I really want to make sure that we really justify and do a return on investment look at any head that we're adding and make sure that it's properly accounted for, because in 5 years we can't be back to where we were a number of years ago. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lemon?
So, in answer to the questions, yes, I've looked at the plans. And I think I mentioned in my opening statement that we live in an incredible community. It's in the middle of a huge economic dynamo that's really driving almost the entire world's economy. One of the really big benefits of that is that the town is getting more revenue this year than last year, and the year before. It's going up approximately $900,000 a year, a little over 7% of that $11.5 million budget we have. That's a great blessing, and the council's handled that well in my view, and I agree completely with what Bill said about operational expenses, something we need to keep an eye on. In my view, they should trail a little bit. It's nice to have a surplus built into that budget. I think it's important that after this great length of time, that we really do make sure we've got the funds set aside to deal with these infrastructure projects which have to get done. And in a community like ours, there's no excuse for not getting them done. The issues with the budget are difficult in many ways, but they're not intellectually difficult. They're just, you've got to make hard choices and be transparent about them. And I think that the council's turned the corner over the last few years. I think we're in a good position now. I can't imagine we won't be in a good position next year, but it will take some discipline to make sure that we're good, not just next year, but in the future going out. As we all know, property taxes go up, but it's possible for other things to stress the budget. Let's be careful that we don't get ahead of ourselves here.
Thank you. Next question will begin with Ms. Howe. This change of subject here. What is your position on narrowing LPMBL to 4 lanes with appropriate bike paths, or what is your concern about improving safety on LPMBL? What are your ideas?
We need to improve safety and health. There's been too many injuries and too many loss of life. But how do we do that is a big question. You know, it's not an easy answer. We have a study going on now about narrowing the 3-lane to 2 lanes. We need to wait for the data. The other options are lights. The other options are beacons. Everything needs to be studied very carefully because it has its impact. When you put a light up, you know, you're diverting traffic to another street that normally would not have traffic. And that's a problem for the other street. If you put in beacons, beacons are kind of, if you've seen the beacons on Middlefield road, they're alarming to some people. They don't know what to do. So the question of El Camino, I wish we had more time, is visibility. You know, when you have two cars stopped and a pedestrian is walking, I looked at this. When a pedestrian is walking, they have a false sense of security that they can continue on, and the third car can go ahead and possibly hit this person. There's also, you know, the fact that, you know, a person might, you know, be careless in crossing El Camino, so we can't exclude that. But in terms of lighting, the last loss of life was not even at a point where we were considering putting a light. So all these options, lights, beacons, narrowing the street, we all need to consider and study further. We don't know yet.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you. First off, with regards to safety on El Camino, there have been a number of accidents. Back in 2012, I got the director of Caltrans' attention by sending a number of letters, you may remember. That started out the process, which now we're looking at hybrid beacons to help with the crossing to improve the safety. However, they're saying that there's not available until 2017. We need them now. To that end, I've been speaking both with Jerry Hill's office and Rich Gordon's office to say maybe we can take the money out of our reserves and they would pay us back in 2017. That's being progressed and discussed, and hopefully that will come to fruition. With regards to 2 lanes versus 3 lanes, one of the things we have to look at is take account all the stakeholders that are involved in that. We want to make sure that emergency vehicles can move up that state highway. We also need to get input from our neighbors as well as the state, since it's a state highway. We have done a lot to improve safety on El Camino. We've removed a lot of the foliage on the medians so that people can see, and we're looking at, as Rose pointed out, a study of some other things we can do. But as far as shrinking it down, would 2 lanes versus 3 lanes on each side of the median be helpful? Yes, in principle it sounds good, but we do need to make sure that we understand what the fire districts and the police department's needs are as well, because we wouldn't want to have an issue where the fire truck couldn't get through and somebody also got seriously injured. So it needs to be addressed and looked at a little more carefully. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers.
Terrific. This is a key issue for me. I feel it deeply. It's something that's very important to me personally. I've worked on the Transportation Committee. It's something we discuss at virtually every Transportation Committee meeting. And the truth is, El Camino is not safe, and we are not doing enough about it. We just aren't. We haven't for a long time. And we need to do more. And it's complicated by the fact that Caltrans is the agency that's in charge of there. But as I tried to mention in my opening statement, we can't be afraid to go after these bureaucracies and explain to them that certain things are not acceptable, like waiting 3 years for a light in a position where people literally are being killed and have been killed. So we're talking about beacons at Isabella and Alejandra. I think we need to look at that whole stretch of road there. And I agree with Bill that we need to talk to Menlo Park, we need to talk to Redwood City. As far as going down to 2 lanes or some kind of grand boulevard with a separated bike lane, really attractive thought. It will not make sense if at the same time Menlo Park is doing the opposite. They're going from 2 lanes to 3 lanes. Because that'll just probably throw a traffic jam back into our stretch there of the road. We need to coordinate it. It's got to be a priority. I think we need to raise a stink about it. It is not safe, and it divides the community. People often talk about west of El Camino and east of El Camino. It's real. It's hard to cross that street.
I think that the most significant traffic safety problem in Atherton is El Camino Rio. First, let me explain what we're doing with the hybrid beacons. We have approval from Caltrans to put what is called a hybrid pedestrian beacon. This is a little marker on the side of the road that you press. You see them on Middlefield Road. When you press them, they're flashers in the middle of Middlefield. This is not a flasher. This is a stoplight. When you press a hybrid beacon, it creates a stoplight. It goes from red to green. The light hangs over the street. It actually creates a red light. It goes from green to yellow to red. It actually creates a red light, which enables a pedestrian to cross the street. Those have been approved for Alejandra, right where Menlo College is, and for Isabella. When I first ran last year, one of the first things I heard was how challenging it was for parents who had young kids in elementary and middle school to not be able to enable their kids to ride their bikes to our park, which is our jewel within the town. Everyone should be able to ride their bike to the park. So I am really happy we're putting these pedestrian beacons there. I agree that the biggest problem with El Camino is visibility. We are going to approve a study to evaluate whether it should be reduced from 6 to 4 lanes. I am very concerned about the idea of reducing it to 4 lanes in terms of congestion. We need the study to be able to figure that out. I don't know the answer. It's a really important issue.
Thank you. The next question will begin with Mr. Boomer. And the question is, how do you think technology can help our town and town government?
Well, there's already been a big change with technology that I was kind of pushing on my last campaign. We now have a searchable website so that you can do research on what's going on in town. We have a revised website that actually is readable and everything's not just jammed in there. And we're taping the meetings so that you can go ahead and see what's happening at the meetings. So, but we don't want to stop there. What we'd like to do, and one of the things that I'd like to do in my platform is create virtual meetings. Private industry does it today. And we could go ahead and increase our transparency, increase public input, if we could have these virtual meetings, like a telepresence type of meeting. So we can either have the virtual streaming through the web or on TV and allow people then to respond either with email or dial in with an operator assist to go ahead and ask questions and provide public comment. Also, Mr. DeGoya and myself are on the technology committee, and we're looking at also setting up a town-wide web or town-wide internet potentially. So those are things that we could then tie everybody's home video-wise into the police station if we chose to do that, in addition to just having your alarms. So there's lots of things that we can do by expanding the technology and using technology today that's commonplace in the schools and commonplace in private industry, but they're not being used or exploited in public. So we need to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lang.
I think in dealing with technology in the town, the first thing we should recognize is that we're operating from a position of strength in the sense that this area is very technologically savvy, and people know how to use it, and we should take advantage of that. We also have a tremendous opportunity coming up, and that's with our library. As we redesign the library, we've got some funds that we can use for many purposes, and one of them would be to help share information within the town, and I know that Bill and Rick are working on a committee with others that's discussing, among other things, fiber to the door and some other ways to really share information throughout the town and to make sure that we've got access to some pretty powerful tools. And we've got some funding available to do that. I'd say that the best thing we could do with technology from the town perspective is, one of the things the town has not been great at is getting input from residents and neighbors on the various issues that come through. It's really hard to get a meaningful level of input from people, and that's really what you need to do to make good decisions from a government standpoint. We've got to figure out a way, and technology is the best way we can do it, to reach out, to make it as easy as possible, to give people information, and then to get some feedback from them. And I'm not talking about getting, 30 people responding to a poll or 40 people responding to a poll or something like that. But getting hundreds of people to respond ought to be something we can accomplish, and it would really improve the governance of the town and help people get what they want.
Thank you, Mr. DeGoya.
This is an area that I've spent a lot of time thinking about. I think of it in 2 ways. Both technology in terms of how it can improve the town as our civic organization, and how it can improve our lives as people living in this town. In terms of the town, I think we've done a great job over the last year with transparency. We've approved OpenGov. You can go in, you can look at our budget, you can look at people's salaries, you can drill down, see exactly how much money is spent in each department of the town. It's truly remarkable how much information you can get if you want to spend the time looking at it online. It is one of the most available government access points around, and I'm proud that we've done that. In terms of, I agree with what Michael said. We need to find a better way to get data from our residents. I mean, one of the big pushes we have with the Civic Center is to go out and get input from people in terms of what you think about the different ideas that we have. And that's something I'd like to examine and improve over the next year. We are on this technology committee, and this will be hoping to bring technology to you to make our communication infrastructure for the whole town better and at a base level free. There will be internet access for every household in some way. That's the ultimate goal. And it should be centered in the library. We have the funds in the library to do it, and it's the library can be an information management hub. I'm really excited about that.
Thank you. Ms. Powell?
All these ideas are great, and I love it, and I'm not a technology person, as a different generation. I'm representing the people who are not, technology savvy. How are you going to reach them? How are you going to bring them on board? I like the answers to that. A lot of people are still waiting for their newsletter, in the mail. So I think that there needs to be a communication in terms of what you're doing, not just for a particular generation, but the other generation as well. We're not quite as savvy, and how do you bring them in? That's a large population of Atherton, I feel. And I think that all these ideas are great. I'd love to see them, and I may be able to use them. But ultimately, you've got to bring everybody in, the young, the middle-aged, the old. And typically, some of us aren't quite that savvy, and we need to just learn how to do that. In terms of the library, I agree. I was on the library subcommittee with you. I think the library is the best means to do it. We talked about having that as a community center, where the young and the old gather. There's lessons, there's classes, and all of that. So we need to think about that. I don't have the answer yet. We need to think about every age group.
Thank you. Now we'll come back to the next question. This has to do with the topic, the topic. What do you think is the future of high-speed rail and downstream electrification as it relates to the town?
So I'm on the rail committee. It's an issue I care a great deal about. I care about it for several reasons. I care about it as an Athertonian because I think high-speed rail's got the potential to really harm the town. It could make a significant difference, divide our town, physically divide our town, and create environmental damage and safety issues. I also care about it as a Californian, I'll say. I think, they're saying now it's a $67 billion project that will be completed in 2029. In my experience, when I hear things like that, that means it's north of $100 billion that will be completed in 2040. And all this while, in my mind, is based essentially on 1970s or 1960s technology. It just seems to me to be too expensive and the wrong thing to be building for California. It's also inconsistent with Prop 1A that was passed. So a lot of reasons that I'd be opposing. In terms of whether it's going to happen, I think there's an assumption in Atherton that it's not going to happen, and I think that's dangerous. I think that there's a very good chance that the governor is strongly supportive of high-speed rail. They are looking to break ground down in the Central Valley. They are taking steps. I think on the assumption that once it gets started, no one will be able to stop the flow of funds, and they'll be spending some money around. So I think we need to be vigilant about it. I think it can be stopped. I think it should be stopped. But I think it's a long way from being stopped. And I think people who have the assumption it's over, that's a wrong assumption. It's taking a lot of energy to make sure that it's not. In terms of electrification, there are some other things we could be doing to improve our rail service, and I hope that we have a chance to talk about that in the future. Thank you.
I share Mike's concern with high-speed rail and electrification. I am proud of the Atherton residents who have been leaders in the state of California in opposing high-speed rail, not in opposing it in principle, but in looking at the law and opposing what has been going on with the high-speed rail authority that is contrary to the law. And I am proud of the way that Atherton has participated and Athertonians have participated in supporting that litigation. I do think that litigation is going to succeed, but I still think we have to be vigilant. I think on electrification, this is really just beginning to roll, and it's very unfortunate, in my opinion, that Caltrain is seeking to do this electrification project, which will end up killing or very significantly pruning 2,000 heritage trees. I really think that's unfortunate. It's not the right technology for California. We should be using a new technology. This is a technology that was developed in the 1920s, which is why they need all these high wires and need to cut down the trees for the wires. It's not what we should be doing. We should have a hybrid technology in those engines where they're generating electricity as they run. That's been proposed. It's not what Caltrain wants to do because they want to put in the investment, generate the jobs that these big towers and wires take. I'm totally opposed to it.
High-speed rail. Somehow it's fallen off our radar. You know, we've sort of forgotten about it because of Surveyor and, you know, all the other issues, but to me, it's on my high list of issues in town. This, above all, will divide the town. They say that we've gotten rid of the borough, but if you look at the website and what, you know, it says, everything is very vague and nebulous. Right now, it says that the high-speed rail will be at grade level. What does that mean? At grade level means that you cannot have any schools crossing the high-speed rail. So that means that at any crossing, you have to either tunnel or go overpass. So this impacts Fair Oaks Avenue. So what are they going to do? There are really no clear answers to what's going to happen with the high-speed rail. There's 6 approaches that affect this area, and there's no real answers. And I think it's incumbent upon us, you know, the Athertonians, and you know, the people who are working on this, Jim Jans and Julie, and you know, everybody else, William Ridley, to continue their effort, because it's going to impact Atherton worse than any other town, because we have houses abutting the high-speed rail. Other places have commercial areas, but we really need to inspect on how, you know, how this is going to impact us. So this is not over. We need to keep fighting. You know, electrification or not, you know, we don't have an answer yet.
Okay, so 4 years ago, you know, we had a platform that said oppose the high-speed rail. We have been actively doing that as a council, and in fact, a number of years ago, I brought forward an initiative where we actually funded $20,000 towards a lawsuit that now is going to the Supreme Court, is being appealed to the Supreme Court. So Atherton has been doing their part, but I think I echo the concern of some of the other candidates up here that says that, you know, it seems to have fallen off the radar, or people think it's not going to happen, but the governor continues to press forward. Electrification is going to take down 20,000 heritage trees along the peninsula. That's not going to help the environment here. Okay, the trees are, you know, of course, help clean the air. It's going to put more dust and dirt in the air for the people that live near it. There's going to be loud sounds, etc. So I don't think that the electrification is going to help here, and it's not bringing the train back to Atherton. They said that they would, if they electrified, they would have the train stopping in Atherton. We're going to get one stop, is what they say. So this whole process really needs to be looked at. The council and the town submitted a series of objections to the draft EIR. We're waiting for a formal response. Caltrain keeps saying that they're going to move forward. They put a press release out on that. And we need to continue to press forward and hold people accountable to answer our questions and to really make sure that there's not a detrimental impact on our town. It is a serious, serious situation, and we can't lose our vision on it. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question begins with Dr. Gloria. This question is, what should the council be doing regarding emergency preparedness in the event of a major earthquake, epidemic, or terrorist attack?
Well, we need to organize both at the town level and within each of the neighborhoods. In fact, we're doing this. We have a earthquake preparedness exercise that is happening later this month. It's a full-day exercise, and It will include using the Emergency Response Center at the town center, which is currently inadequate and will be redesigned in the course of the new Civic Center, but it will bring different people together, fire, police, and town administration to address a hypothetical earthquake. We would have the same type of organization at that EOC in the event of a terrorist attack or some other kind of natural disaster. I think we need the same thing in each of the neighborhoods. Lindenwood is the most organized on this, and the other neighborhoods in the town need to see, and I think the town needs to provide leadership to help make it happen, that other neighborhoods organize in the same kind of way that Lindenwood is. And Lindenwood will be participating in this great shakeout exercise that's happening later this month.
Thank you. Ms. Powell?
I agree, there's a great need for this. You know, you never know what's going to happen, whether it's an earthquake or, you know, any other terrorist activity or storm issue. You know, I had an interesting encounter with Wally Sleeve at the Linden Homeowners Association, and he talked me to death about what he was going to do on October 16th, I believe, in terms of earthquake preparedness. And I thought to myself, why don't they do that to all the different neighborhoods and communities? And I thought he would be a key person to help educate everybody on how to present this and how to organize this. This is certainly not anything that I've heard of before in my neighborhood. I've lived in 2 areas, you know, in Atherton, and nobody's done that. And I thought this is really an ideal situation because you never know. And maybe the town needs to spearhead this, you know, and promote this and then have, you know, subcommittees or whatever. But I was truly educated by what they're planning to do, what they plan to do, and I think it's a great thing. And I think there's nobody going to, I think everybody would benefit from this sort of exercise. And what do you do in an emergency period?
Thank you. It's a great question. The town actually has an organization called ADAPT, which is Atherton Disaster Preparedness, and a number of people. I think Scott Barnum is the head of it. There's a link on my website that you can go to find out what they're doing. The next meeting is going to be on Saturday at 9 o'clock in the Civic Center. So, disaster preparedness started after the Katrina disaster, and there was a big operation here, and they had the fire district, they had the police department, and Charles Marsala was the mayor at the time, and they gave away these little backpacks, and they said to people, it was very sobering, if there's a disaster here, no one's coming to help you, not for 2 or 3 weeks. You need to be able to take care of yourself, and you need to do that. And so that actually got people started in thinking about disaster preparedness, but it was years ago, and I think that that's worn off. I've spoken with the city manager, and I've spoken with Scott. I think it's time for us to have a refresher course on that. And the timing, I brought that up with these guys before we had the Napa earthquake. And so I think we're trying to go ahead and find some way to get it organized. There is the preparedness that's going on. The town is divided into 16 sections, but there's not captains in every section such as there is in Lindenwood. I think that the hats off to the Lindenwood people with Betsy Colquitt and Betsy Colby and Wally and Phil Lively and others that are really doing the yeoman's job to get this done. And so thanks to them for at least taking care of Lindenwood. Thank you.
It is a good question. It's an important question, particularly in this area. I was thinking as everyone was talking about my experience in the Department of Justice, where we went into communities after hurricanes and after riots, or during riots, during electrical failures and power outages. And one of the lessons that came across clear to me, which was also reflected in the 9/11 situation, is that local communities are just not prepared. It's very difficult for people to communicate with each other. There's an assumption the federal government's going to come in to rescue, and it doesn't happen. It's very difficult for the federal government to react to these situations. And here we are in Atherton, where it is a relative certainty at some point we will have an earthquake or we will have something. I I mean, I know I talked to my grandmother and my great-grandma about the '06 quake and what they went through. My brother and I were at the Giants game, Giants-A's game in '89 for that earthquake. It's going to happen. There will be an earthquake here at some point. And I think we need to recognize it's very, very difficult for any city to really convince its residents that this is something they need to take seriously, they need to prepare for. I think among other things, it's really just a question of a bully pulpit and making sure that people are aware of it and at least talking about it amongst their, within their families. I do, hats off to Lyndon again. It's great that they are organized as much as they are. I think the rest of us should be, but I think the main thing for the city, at the very least, is to make sure that people are talking about what they do in case it happens.
Thank you. The next question will begin with Ms. Howell. And this is, how can the town encourage more participation in commission and advisory boards? All right, I'll speak up. How can the town encourage more participation in commission and advisory boards?
Oh, town. It's okay. I've been participating for the last 20 years, so it's hard for me to say, how can you? It's not seamless, but I think for anybody, it takes interest on your part. It's a two-way street. If you're interested, you persevere, and you go to the committees, and you sign up, and you apply, you try to find out what it's about, and you become engaged in what the community is doing. It's hard for me because I've done this for 20 years. I've participated in the town. But I think in terms of reaching out, you as an individual, people as an individual need to, take the initiative to seek what they want to do, whether it's on the rail, whether it's on planning, general plan. You need to find out what your interest is. And then alternatively, I think the town needs to be more open-minded. They need to look at newcomers and be open-minded in terms of accepting that. But, again, it's a two-way street. If there's an interest, I think there's a way to become active in the community. As all of you are here, you become active. And a lot of people have chosen not to attend this meeting, but that's your choice. So again, you need to decide what you want to do at what level.
Thank you, Mr. Whitmer.
So I think part of the problem with lack of people on some of these commissions and committees is the fact that they don't know what's going on. And they don't know that decisions are being made, and recommendations come out of those committee and commissions. They go to the council, and generally the discussion is too late once it goes to the council because a lot of the decisions have already been made. So part of it's communication, and part of it is letting people know, but also part of it is making them aware and allowing them to participate in an easier manner. So it's just like the council meetings. Do you really have the time to go down, sit there till 10 o'clock at night so you can have your 3 minutes? You might be willing to provide that information or that input if it was easy. If it was easy, you could pick up the phone and get on an operator assist call and make your comments at that time. You could see, as I mentioned, you could see on a web stream or on a live TV broadcast, which since we're taping all the meetings now, it's going to be easy for us to do that so that you could then participate, know what's going on, and then either make plans to get to the next meeting, write a letter to the other committee or commissioners, and or actually go to the meeting yourself. So I think opening up the communication, increasing the transparency, and finding a way to get people more involved using the technology that everyone uses today, but the town, I think is a good way for us to go ahead and grow that. Thank you.
Yes. Mr. Lambers?
Another good question. I think the four of us, and probably everybody in the room, likes this stuff. And we are more engaged and more active than most. But I think we should recognize that we live in a community that's got some very busy residents, and one of the things we have to do is let people know, and you can demonstrate. You can't just say, you got to demonstrate over time that their involvement is worth their while. Something happens when they get involved.
I was surprised when I got involved at how true that is. I mean, when you are at the table at a meeting, the meeting is different than if you weren't there. And if you got issues you really care about, you can make a difference in Atherton. And that message doesn't really permeate very far. I think we need to make it as easy as possible, as Bill was saying, to tap the expertise of the people we have in this community. We have some extraordinary people in this community, and if we can figure out the best ways to tap their expertise, and some of it may be through the technology outreach that we were talking about, but make it easy for them to make a difference for us. I think it would be great. I will also say that civility is really important, and there's kind of a little bit of a hangover in Atherton about concern that meetings are not always civil, and people are not always treated respectfully. I will say, in my experience on the rail transportation committee, that has not been the case. People are treated respectfully. It may just be that perceptions lag, that message needs to get out there. If you are taking part in one of these committees, you deserve to be treated respectfully. You will be treated respectfully. People will listen to you. And I think, again, that message over time will get out to the community. It'll help around the edges for sure.
Thank you. Mr. DeMolia?
This is an issue that I've been focused on over the last year. I think that the question is, how can the town help increase resident participation in our committees and commissions? I think the answer is leadership. When you know what is going on in the committees, if you communicate to people about that, and as you find people, and when you're in an elected position like I have been, you hear people's interests. I mean, I am totally accessible to people. I answer every email. I answer every phone call. I talk to people I don't agree with. I try to understand what are people's concerns and what are their interests. And when I know there's an opening on a commission, I encourage people to participate in it. I think that's good leadership. I suggested to the council that we create a technology committee because I think communication channels for all of us in Atherton are terrible, whether they're broadband or cellular. We should be able to improve that. I have gone out and reached out and encouraged others to go out and reach out. We now have 9 residents on that committee. And these are residents that were not on other committees. They're people that are interested in technology. We should have the same exact thing with the Park and Rec Committee because our park is such a valuable asset in our community. We need more people to participate in that. I think it's a matter of time. And I think the Civic Center actually will really help create an enthusiasm and get more people involved.
Okay, that's that question. So the next question will begin with Mr. Weaver. And I'll just follow up with a question that sort of combines some of this. So, for example, you encourage citizens to serve on boards and commissions. Over the year, as was brought up, there have been issues that commissions have recommended and the public has supported, but either because of staff negotiating with outside parties or recommendations of commissions have not been agreed to by the council, how would you resolve that situation? So you have the involvement, but then there either the staff or the council don't agree.
That's a great question. I'm not sure there's a great answer, but first off, I'm aware of 2 times. Once I was on the council, and another time I was not on the council, specifically where things were overridden by the Planning Commission. And actually on the one that I was there, I voted with the Planning Commission because I personally believe if we asked the experts in the community to be on the committee and to look into things, and they're the learned people, their recommendations should be held in very high esteem, and if we want them to continue to serve, because we're all getting paid the same, which is 0, I think it's worthwhile to them to have some enjoyment and some fulfillment by the council working with them. However, the council's not a rubber stamp, and we need to look at what staff says. And they may bring up a point that wasn't available for the Planning Commission, or there may be extra public input that indicates that perhaps that the Planning Commission or a committee did not hear. And so, in those cases, I think that there needs to be an explanation, perhaps a continuation, where then either it gets remanded back to the committee or commission to relook at it and held another public hearing, and or to at least explain, hey, this information was available before, wasn't available before, and here's what we're looking at. But we can't discourage people from being on the committees. But I do think we need to, as the council, support, but not be a rubber stamp. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lambert.
Another good question, and the answer I think is not easy. As Bill was saying, there's a concept in the law of due deference that's applied, and it seems to me that these committees do make recommendations, and the council does have the ability to overrule these recommendations. But they should recognize, they should defer to the decision-making process that the committee made wherever that's possible. And the council should be careful, it seems to me, in overruling or reversing a committee recommendation for a lot of reasons. Not least of which is that will discourage participation in committees over years. It just will. People don't like to waste their time, and they're feeling you've wasted your time if you spend months working on something that doesn't come through. Particularly where we've got committees that have smart, hard-working people, and they're doing their best to get to the right decision, whatever that decision is. When there's a dispute between the council and the committee, my thought is be as transparent as possible. So if the council is coming to a different conclusion, it can do so respectfully. It can explain why it's reaching that decision, and if at all possible, kick it back or remand it, as Bill said, back to the committee for them. Here's new information, here's new insight, here's whatever. Can you consider this in your decision? But I do think it's an institutional issue we should be careful with, because word of mouth spreads, and people don't want to invest time in the committee process that isn't fruitful, and they want to feel like they're making a difference. And generally, by the way, I should say the committees do. The committees do make a difference. That comes up, but it's relatively rare.
Thank you. Mr. DeGroia?
Well, so the structure of our town government is that the committees are advisory committees to the council. The council makes the final decision. In my opinion, when these issues come up for the council, we as council members have independent judgment, and we should exercise that independent judgment. But it's our responsibility to reach out to the residents and understand what the residents feel on the issues that we face. I take that responsibility very seriously. I've actively reached out to people over the last year, and I'd like to do it more than I have done, and I always respond and am accessible. I would like to proactively reach out more. I think it's an important thing to do. There are times where committees make a recommendation and the council changes that somewhat, or staff may alter that to some degree, but it's not staff's ultimate decision, it's the council's ultimate decision. I think the right answer is one of communication, that if there are differences, it's really important to have a very transparent, open communication between the council and the committees, so the committees feel really respected and not disrespected. I think that's very important.
Thank you. Ms. Powell?
Well, I can think of several examples. I was on the planning commission for 8 years, and some of our recommendations have been overridden by council. And, I can say that at the time, they were probably rather hot topic items, and we couldn't understand it, but, at the committee or commission level, we only get a certain amount of information, and we do the best we can in order to reach, a decision. When it goes to council, I presume it goes to a different level. There's legal, there's a lot of neighborhood, input. Not that we don't get neighborhood input, but if there's anything that overrides us, we presume there's been some thought put into it. It's not that we don't like the idea that, our vote was, it's not discounted, but, that they reached a different decision. But I think that as a commissioner, we all thought that, they took into other considerations that we weren't access to, or had privy to. So, I think that there's a synergy. We, as commissioners or committee members, reach a certain decision, we push it on to council, and, you know, that's how the whole system works. They reach a decision based on a different set, an additional set of circumstances, and that's how it works.
Thank you. Next question begins with Mr. Memphis. Okay. This question has to do with infrastructure needs. It says, we have extensive infrastructure needs, streets, drainage, bike and pedestrian plans, park needs. What are your priorities and how do we pay for your plan?
As mentioned earlier, when we were talking about the budget, we are fortunate to be in a position where we can have this conversation about infrastructure needs. And we should recognize that there's been a lot of good work done to get us to the point where we can have this conversation. There are a lot of infrastructure needs. It seems to me the most important thing we can do in looking at these infrastructure needs is make sure that we are getting the input from the community so that we are building something that makes sense and that will help make people's lives better and not worse, and will not be so disruptive, or will ultimately not change things. We want to make things better. And what that means, we're looking at a lot right now in the town. There's just a lot going on. There's four master plans out there that deal with bike and pedestrian safety, with drainage, with the civic center, and with this park. There's a significant amount going on there. As we develop the plans, part of those plans is how are we going to pay for it? I think the idea is that we will have to make some priorities. We'll have to decide what's going to be privately funded and what's going to be publicly funded. We've done some of that, and that's great. I do think some of it is critical. If you've got a safety issue, that becomes the highest priority. You know, and if it ever rains again, I think we're going to find the drainage is a big issue, and we're going to have to get on that. That's not something people think about a lot, but it's an important thing that we need to get done. So, in my view, we'll build in a plan how to prioritize, and that's how the budget allocates. That's how you pay for it. The critical thing is getting the input from people and making sure that people understand what's going on and are supportive of it, because it's their tax dollars that are made for it.
Thank you, Mr.
We currently have, with this year's budget, $9.8 million net surplus that's available for capital improvement projects. That won't all be used, but it's available. Some of these projects can be funded with grants. Every single time we go into one of these big project areas, and the really big project areas are drainage and the pedestrian and bike paths. They're in the range of $20 million each, is what each of these master plans look at the maximum side of what the cost would be. Some of those costs can definitely be obtained through grants. There are all kinds of grants out there for safety improvements on safe routes to school, and we are approaching them with that in mind. The question was priorities. My number one priority is that we have safe routes to schools. We need to have Class 2 bike lanes down Middlefield Road, which is one of our most heavily traveled roads for schools. I think we need to show the town of Atherton, our residents, what it would look like to have really good bike lanes on that road. And then we can all look at it and we can make a judgment. I don't want to make the judgment about what are the priorities just of myself individually. I want the residents to make that. And my commitment is to go out to the residents and to hear from them.
Thank you. Ms. Carl?
Infrastructure, that's why I'm here. I'm an architect, I love infrastructure. Believe it or not, it's not glamorous. I know about this business. We have a couple things. I think the priority too is, I think the issues are the bike and pedestrian safety, and the drainage. The drainage in this town is something that we need to really look at. Everybody that I've spoken to as a candidate has mentioned the drainage. Why is it like this? Why is it like that? There's a study coming out. I think it's going to come out pretty soon, and I think the cost of correcting the drainage in our town will be in the range of about, I was told, $40 million. So we need to prioritize this cost. What do we want to do first? We need to study this first of all, and this is what this 5-year plan is. Where is this money coming from? Part of the money is coming from the parcel tax. That's another argument why we cannot do away with the parcel tax. So we're talking about a $40 million hit with just drainage itself, and another $40 million hit with other infrastructure projects. Most of it is donated for the Civic Center. So I think that the priority would be, I agree, the bicycle and path, the safety issues, but also drainage, townwide drainage. It is something that it's something that we need to take care of now before it gets worse. Mr. Whitmer?
Thank you. First off, all the plans aren't done, so we need to assess those plans. Now, the town went out and asked for these plans to be done. And of course, when you say, hey, give me a plan, what could we do to fix things? They give you real things, and they give you things that look like they're decaying, and then they also have some nice to haves. That's what happened on several of the plans already. So first thing you'd have to do to prioritize is assess the needs. And I think you have to take a hands-on approach. You have to go look at it. Secondly, you have to look at the timing. Do we need to do it now? Overriding it, as Mr. Lepper said, is safety. If there's a safety issue, I don't care if it's in the park, if it's a bike pedestrian, or if it's a drainage, that has got to be at the top of the list. But we have to make some decisions, and we have to make some hard choices. Secondly, the funding. Every time a big number comes up, whether it's for the drainage or whatever, I always ask the question, why are we having to pay for it all by ourselves? Is there a grant? I've been pushing grants, now other people are talking about grants, good. If it's water, for example, that's coming from Portola Valley or Menlo Park, why shouldn't they be paying for part of it? So other jurisdictions could also share this funding. So we need to look at really who should be paying it, or if it's just servicing one neighborhood, then perhaps there needs to be a special assessment district set up for that to be funded. So you've got to look at the need, you've got to look at the timing, and you've got to look at where the money's going to come from and set the proper priorities. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the next question begins with Mr. Bedoya, and I have a request from the audience that you be sure to speak to the microphone 3 inches as close as you can get. Apparently some people are having difficulty hearing problems. And the sound is not as good. But anyway, all right. The next question has to do with noise. What are the solutions to noise problems with train springs and automobiles in how would you deal with that?
Well, they're different problems. The problem that has kind of gotten the most publicity recently is the aircraft noise problem with San Carlos Airport and Surf Air. That's an issue I've been very involved with because I've been meeting with the airport, with Surf Air, with residents for a year. And we've had 2 community meetings, one recently last week here with 160 people. And that shows that there's a good deal of concern from the people that live in that approach path to San Carlos Airport. And the particular concern is with Surf Air in that case. That solution is an operational and technical decision that Surf Air needs to implement. They need to learn from other pilots that are flying into San Carlos and not generating the same level of ground noise. With the trains, the only way we're going to stop the whistle from blowing is if we create grade separation. That's been talked about for a long time. We need to, I would love to find a way to reduce the train noise. I'm sure that everybody who lives near the train noise would really love to reduce it. And Atherton's been pushing on this for a long time, and we need to continue to do so.
Thank you. Ms. Powell?
Well, excessive noise, whether it's in your home, your backyard, your street, your community, everybody in Atherton deserves to have a quiet and peace.
Rose, move the microphone.
Of their home. So, Surf Air is one issue. It's just, there are other noise issues. It's the schools, you know, there's complaints about schools, there's surveyor, and all of that that we need to evaluate. Right now, the town has a standard of 60 dBA, you know, after 8 a.m. and until, you know, and I think before 8 a.m. it's 50 dBA. And we try to adhere to that. There's exceptions, but I think that when unusual noise situations occur, as in surf air or behind a sports area, I think the neighbors get irritated and the town gets involved, and we need to address that. So how we address that is a different, you know, situation. You know, we need to reach some sort of compromise. It's usually a compromise situation with either the school or the surf air or whatever the entity is. But I think all in all, the people deserve a right to some peace and quiet in their homes.
Thank you. Mr. Whitmer?
I think noise pollution is one of the big issues that's facing our town today. I've identified that as a key environmental issue, I think, for this campaign. Trains, I'm affected by all of them personally. I live on Glenwood Avenue. I get a lot of traffic. I'm underneath the surf air, and I'm a block from the train. So I share your pain, whoever asked the question. Now, how do you fix it? Well, you can't just fix it yourself. We can do some things, but we need to reach out to other jurisdictions. We need to work with our state and our federal elected officials to also put pressure on the proper organizations to try and help us. So there are things that we can do. We are doing a lot by ourselves, but it is a need. So for the train, for example, there are the discussions working with Caltrain to put in quad gates, perhaps at Watkins, and perhaps we can set up a quiet zone so there'll be a little bit of a respite, but it's not going to be complete for the whole town. There's, you know, the work that we're doing with surf air, that's another thing, and the traffic congestion, you know, we need to do the traffic studies and see what we can do to make it more advantageous to people to actually take other routes except other than just crossing through our town. So, thank you. Those are my ideas.
Yes, Mr. Rumpus?
When you walk around town and knock on doors, which I mean you probably all been doing, this issue comes up very consistently. And it wears different hats. Sometimes it's a train, sometimes it's a plane, sometimes it's something else. But people do care about noise pollution in their homes, and for good reason. And I agree completely with Rick that there's no one-size-fits-all solution. I think we've got to address each situation separately. I will say that in that meeting at Surf Air that was here, whenever that was, a week or two ago, that was a very constructive meeting, a very constructive approach. We had the CEOs, the CEO from Surf Air here to talk about what they were doing and see if we could work out some kind of compromise solution that would help. I think that's a nice model, and I think it's something we should continue to pursue. There was a rail committee earlier today that I was at, actually left a little early to come here. One of the topics is whether we can create a quiet zone and what quad gates would mean. It turns out in Orange County they've had some success with that. Menlo Park's interested, Palo Alto's interested. It's something we absolutely should look at. It'll help around the edges. As Bill said, it's not a perfect solution, but it'll definitely help around the edges. One other thing I would mention again, knocking on doors, one of the issues that comes up in the nature of noise pollution is construction. There is a lot of construction that goes on around Atherton. It's something people talk about. I don't have a solution for that one, but I'll tell you that I'd put that in that same category. And we need to have a solution aimed at each sort of category of noise and see what we can do. My guess is we'll be able to help a little around the edges in all of them, and hopefully that makes people's lives a little better.
Thank you. The next question, we'll begin with Ms. Howe. It is, I would like each candidate to address the Parker Avenue issue. Do you know what the question is asking?
The Parker Avenue issue in terms of...
I have no idea.
Well, I guess it's a right-of-way issue. Who asked that
You
question?
speak into the microphone.
Okay, who asked the question? I think it's the right-of-way issue of how much space or how much should be allotted back to the town or to the resident. I mean, is that speaking to it or?
I have no idea.
Okay, I'm trying to figure out what the Parker issue is.
All right, well,
I thought it was resolved.
all right, well, why don't we just pass on that?
Okay.
Because I'm not sure either.
That's why I'm asking who asked it, and maybe we can.
Well,
clarify.
perhaps they can explain it later, but it's a hard question if you don't know.
I know, because I thought it was resolved.
Why don't we just pass on that one?
Okay.
All right, the next one is, what is your opinion, well, you can start on this one. What is your opinion on outsourcing versus hiring new town employees?
Oh, okay, so recently, I think there's a consideration of hiring 2 new town employees, the arborist and the code enforcement officer. And my understanding is that the council went through the numbers, and I'm sure these 2 fellows are going to talk about it a little bit more in detail. But they went through the numbers and justified why hiring was better than outsourcing for these 2 particular cases. The numbers made sense, even with the burden for the town. The 2 entities, the arborist, we couldn't get full-time, or the code enforcement officer, we couldn't quite get full-time. But even if we did, it exceeded the number of the person that we could hire, in-house. So I think it was justified in terms of the numbers, and I think what justified it also was the term limit of these 2 positions. One was a 3-year limit, and one was a 4-year limit in terms of assessing how it would work out. So I think it's okay in terms of all these parameters, in terms of assessing the needs.
Thank you, Mr. Whitmer.
I think the town needs to be very careful in adding long-term operational costs. I brought that up at the meeting. I think the outsourcing that we've done here, of course, a number of years ago was very important and was necessary. It saved the town over $1 million in the first year, essentially. But more important than the current year cost, the service levels improved, and also the liabilities that the town would incur disappeared or were minimized. And so outsourcing isn't a bad way to move forward. There are times that you do want to have people, in your organizations, though. And so you have to be very careful to look at it, and not just look at a current year cost. You actually have to look at the long-term costs, and that's why I feel very strongly on. Also, I think we can be more creative with regards to contracting for outsourcing services. So I'm actually in the business of doing that, and you can set up key parameters, service level agreements, you can define key personnel and things like that so you can protect the services that you want. But we need to just be careful. So I'm not saying outsource everything, because that's not our position. I think where we are today is a good place. But I would be very, very careful as we move forward, because we don't want to take on not just current year costs, but take on additional liabilities that will burden our children and their children with the large pension liabilities and the health care costs that we just got out of. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lambert.
This is a key issue for the council to address. It's been that way for the last few years, and it'll be that way for the next few years. A big percentage of our budget goes to personnel. 52.4% is going to the police, as I understand it. There are benefits to outsourcing. Businesses all over the country and all over the world are outsourcing where it makes sense. I think the town needs to outsource where it makes sense. One of the things we can be very careful about is that we're comparing apples to apples. We're making intelligent decisions when we choose to outsource. There are certain times when having the expertise stay local is critical, and you can't outsource that. There's other times where there's a difference in functionality or a difference in service. And in my view, for example, the police services couldn't truly be outsourced in an apples-to-apples way, because the replacement services would not be the same. And we need to be conscious of that. I do think that when we look at outsourcing, I think Bill's exactly right, that operational expenses need to be monitored closely. We can't make long-term commitments on a short-term budget that's coming in. We have had problems in the past. It's a temptation to do, and it takes a little bit of discipline to not do that. I also believe that when we look to outsource, one of the things that we are doing is affecting the community at at large in what we're doing. Atherton is a special small town, and part of that is people know it. We've got expertise here. You can get that sometimes with outsourcing, but it's much easier when you have permanent employees. I think we're in a good place now. But
Thank you, Mr. DeGralia.
I think that you need to look at this issue on a job-by-job basis. It depends on what the job is. The two jobs that we have recently decided to hire for, one I thought was extremely clear, which is an arborist. Atherton loves its trees, honors its trees, and trees need protection, whether they're in the right-of-way or whether they're in the park. And the arborist ends up with detailed information about the trees, really information about individual trees and what those trees need. When we looked at the cost that we had for outsourcing the arborist for half-time, it was $150,000 a year. The cost for a full-time in-town arborist, including the load of the pension, was $116,000 for a full-time person. That was obvious. We were smart, I think, to put a time limit on the length of that job. It would be a 4-year job so that we could reevaluate it. The code enforcement officer was not quite so obvious, but again, code enforcement officer gets to know certain construction sites, gets to know where code enforcement needs to be done. That's intellectual property that's in the town. I think it's easier to manage it from an employee level. And in that case, it wasn't quite as obvious, and we held that job to a 3-year job. I think every single time we have to look at it at a job-by-job basis, and I think that Atherton is in a good position because of the work that was done by the prior councils to be in the situation that we're in today.
Thank you. I think this will be the final question before the closing statement. We'll begin with Mr. Widmer. What, in your mind, are the 3 most important activities for the council to address over the next 2 years?
Well, as I mentioned, I think keeping an eye on the finances is very, very important. We need to make sure that we don't just say, hey, we've got reserves, let's go spend them. We need to save some for a rainy day. As I mentioned on the infrastructure costs and the infrastructure priorities, we need to actually validate what ones there are, make sure that we have to pay for it, or we can maybe share it with somebody, and then make sure that the need is today, or can we put it off for 2 or 3 years because the need isn't really today. So the first priority, I think, is looking at the budget, managing the budget. The second key priority is looking at the infrastructure and improving that. But the third one, I think, is safety. So we need to keep our streets safe. Now, some of that's going to be the investment with the street pedestrian master plan implementation. We talked about Middlefield Road before. There are 17 accidents, and these are not car-to-car accidents. These are accidents of car to people, car to bicyclists. So I do think that there's a need for us to invest there. But also we need to keep our police force responsiveness at the level it's at. Today, if you put in a call to your police department, they're there, they try to be there on non-emergency calls within 8 minutes, or 8 minutes, so, or less. And most of the time, they're in the 5-minute range, and we need to maintain that. So we are investing in our police force, and we need to maintain that, so safety is number 3. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, 3 priorities: transportation safety, no on high-speed rail, budget sustainability. Transportation safety, we talked a lot about that. We talked about Middlefield, we talked about El Camino Real. It's worth noting there's 9 schools in Atherton, and with schools in session, our population more than doubles. That gives us, I think, a special obligation to really look at these issues. We want to make sure that this community is safe for kids. And right now, some streets just aren't. And that's something that seems to be a very, very high priority that I would focus on. High-speed rail, as we discussed earlier tonight, there's a sense that it's not going to happen, and I think that's a misplaced sense of comfort. The truth is that there's a lot of work to be done to make sure that doesn't happen, and we need to make that a priority and put it. If high-speed rail comes to Atherton, we will have a different community. There's no question about it. And then on the budget, as Bill's saying, we need to make sure that we craft a sustainable budget. And what has been really good for us in the last few years has been the economy. Things are going very well around Atherton, and that has really helped our budget situation.
So we are now in a position where we should be able to craft a sustainable budget. We should, we have to make hard choices, but not that hard of choices, the way many cities in the rest of the country have to make. I would say overarchingly, an issue that we need to be aware of is there is growth going on around us from Redwood City and Menlo Park and Palo Alto. It will affect us, and we need to get ahead of that and think about ways to mitigate any downsides to that growth. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. DeGolia?
I think that the first responsibility that we have in the next 2 years and in every year thereafter is conservative fiscal management. And we have to stay on that and be focused on it, and I think we will be. I think that we need to prioritize safety. We've talked about it a lot. We are doing 2 studies that I think are really important. One is on bike paths that will focus on Middlefield initially, from border to border. We are going to do a study on El Camino Real that will look at the 4 lanes, 6 lanes, and how to improve safety on El Camino Real. I think that it's critical that we study these issues, they're complex issues, and then we implement. We have to make change to improve the safety on the streets. The third area is capital improvement. I think we're doing exactly the right thing with our master plans. We need to be thorough with those master plans. There needs to be a lot of communication between each of the committees that's managing the master plans and the consultants that are doing them. And there needs to be back and forth between the council and the committees, and there are. I'm really excited about what we're going to do with the Civic Center. I truly think it's going to change our town by creating the center that we haven't previously had, that we can all be proud of and respect. I want to see some of these projects that we put in place become examples that we can use in our own lives and that we can be proud of. I think that's one of the reasons I'm excited about Middlefield Road.
Thank you. Ms. Powell?
3 priorities. I think the first thing is budget. If we don't have a sound budget, fiscally, we need to remain fiscally prudent. We're in good times now. That doesn't mean that we're going to be in good times in the next 5 years. So we need to continue our, watch over our expenditures, make sure that our expenditures do not exceed our revenues, and continue on that path that the council people have been on. We need to continue with the save and spend philosophy of the capital improvement programs, and that is not to spend anything until we have the money in hand. And I appreciate the 35% financial reserve policy that they have as well. I think that's going to help protect the town. Infrastructure. I think safety is a subset of infrastructure. I think that there's a lot to be done in this town, drainage, safety, and all of that. We need to look at definitely safety in terms of the bike paths, the traffic and all of that. But I think that the overarching thing is infrastructure. How is this town being managed in terms of, the streets, the drainage and all of that. So we need to take a look at that. We need to look at deferred maintenance. As you know, as homeowners, once we defer our maintenance, it costs more to, correct something. So I think we need to correct that now. So high-speed rail, that's a non-issue. I think we really need to look at that and not forget about that, because that's going to divide the town.
Thank you. Now we'll begin with the closing statements, and we'll go in a reverse order of these statements, and we'll begin with Mr. Whitmer.
Okay. First off, I'd like to thank you, the residents, for the honor you bestowed upon me 4 years ago with your votes. Serving the community as a council member has been a privilege that I've never taken lightly. I ask you to evaluate me on 3 parts. First, my performance for the town. Second, my platform. And lastly, my professional experience that I bring to bear on executing this platform. We discussed briefly the first and the last item in my opening remarks, and we've discussed many of the issues you wanted to hear about here tonight. But I urge you to take the time to go to my website, www.builtforatherton.com, and review my bio and platform in detail. Furthermore, please visit the websites of the other candidates. Review their plans, their detailed approaches to solving the issues, as well as their backgrounds. Electing your leaders for the next 4 years is like hiring somebody. You review their credentials, you check their references, their accomplishments. You determine whether or not they're relevant for the job you want them to do. Are the platform issues and the solutions in line with your thinking? You need to do this because the people you elect will be setting policies, setting tax rates, and spending your money over the next 4 years. And unlike an employee that you might hire, you can't fire them. They're going to be here. So I hope you will review my website, and you'll see that I'm the accountable, the experienced, and the fiscally responsible leader that you want to have on the council for the next 4 years, and I'd appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Howe? Speak into the mic.
Thank you. Well, I think we have a lot of work ahead of us in the next 4 years and many decisions to make. I'd like to, I'm committed to listening to all of you and listening to your viewpoints and finding common ground. And my decisions in the past have always been to protect and maintain those qualities that make our town a desirable place to live. And I hope to continue that. But with the nature and number of capital improvement projects ahead, I think it's a good time for an architect, such as me, with the building industry background to join the council and contribute. I've done this for the last 20 years, contribute to the town, and hopefully you'll consider me in the next 4 years. So 3 things to remember. I have the town experience, 20 years of experience. I have the professional background, the project management experience that is relevant to the coming 4 years to evaluate the capital improvement programs that are coming up. And I have a dedication to the town. I've spent 20 years trying to make our town a special place to live, and I hope you all agree that I have. And I would like to do this on the council level. So I feel like my particular skills are well suited for the coming years ahead. And I feel like I'm the right person for this right job, with the right skills for the right time. So please vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. DeGolia?
First, I'd like to thank the residents for the votes that I've received and for the time that each of you spend on the committees or when you come to these public events to hear those of us. I do think this is an important decision. You're electing 3 people to represent you over the next 4 years. And those of us that you do elect, we will be making decisions that impact our tax rates and how we spend the money that are collected in the town of Atherton. So this is a really important issue. And we do face some big projects over the next 4 years. I think that we are in great shape economically. As I have consistently said, I think it's essential that the council continue to exercise conservative fiscal management, and I will do that. I think one of the strongest attributes that I bring to the council is a commitment to communicate to you and to work very hard to try to represent you and to listen to you. I have done that over the last year, and I am committed to do that over the next 4 years. I think that the critical priority of safety on our streets is essential, and I hope that all of you will express your interests and your concerns, because decisions that we make will impact you, whether we put in a pedestrian hybrid beacon or a street light or a stop sign. These things will affect every one of us, and how we deal with important issues like noise and construction in our neighborhoods is part of the reason that you elect people to represent you. I feel very honored to be in that position. I look forward to being able to do it for another 4 years, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Lopez.
Terrific.
Speak into the mic.
It's rare that people can't hear me. Let me add my thanks to everyone in this room and to the leagues for this opportunity to discuss town issues. On November 4, we will elect a majority of the council, and your vote is very important. The new council will face tough issues. Atherton, we said, is an extraordinary town. We're a semi-rural community right smack in the middle of the world's greatest, most vibrant economic engine. It will be a challenge for all of us to preserve our town's special character in that setting. As you've heard, we will face many diverse issues. Let me stress again 3 that I find most important. Traffic safety.
Town needs to be safe for walking and riding bikes for all of us. That's from students to the elderly. In particular, El Camino Real is too dangerous, and we need to make that street safer and more integrated into the community. 2, high-speed rail. Simply speaking, I'm against it. We discussed this earlier. We'll divide our community. It's the wrong solution at the wrong time for a problem that wouldn't be solved at best until 2040 at a cost of $100 billion. We have better uses for our public money. The budget. Our budget is $11.6 million a year, and the economy has been very, very good to this town. We are no longer in a deficit, and Atherton should never have a deficit. It takes discipline to resist spending money we don't have, but it's the right thing to do, and I'm committed to doing it. Overarchingly, we are also facing issues of great change. Change is the constant. Rapid growth in the cities surrounding us will mean change, more traffic, many other challenges. Our own plans, like the Civic Center, will also bring change. We need to get meaningful input from you on these issues, and as a town, we must do better at getting that input. The question we all need to answer is, how do we adapt to change while preserving the special character of Atherton? And I commit to you that I will work hard to get your input, and I will listen to you. I will be honored to have your vote and serve as your representative of the council, and thank you.
Thank you, Kennedy.